As said before, my name is Nonku Mthembu. I'm from the Tourism Empowerment Council, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to address you and just to give you an update on the Gazetted Tourism Charter. My presentation won't be very long, and I think you'll appreciate it. Looking into the time, I won't be taking too much time into your lunch hour. I'll talk briefly on TEXA, which is the Tourism Empowerment Council. We'll then get into the purpose of the presentation. I'll talk about the promulgation process, the scope of application. This refers to who the charter applies to. And then I'll highlight the key differences between the codes of good practice and the tourism codes. And we'll then get into the implementation framework of BEE and the measuring criteria. I'll speak briefly on the compliance levels, and then I'll speak on the role of stakeholders, which would be the people in this room, and just touch lightly then on the verification, accredited verification agencies. In 2005, the Minister of Environmental Affairs and Tourism appointed the BEE Charter, the BEE Charter Council. The council launched in 2006 at Indaba, and it launched as a Tourism BEE Charter Council. In the same year, we then launched a baseline study on the state of transformation. The following year, the results of that study were then released at our first BEE conference. This was in April 2007. In February 2007, the codes of good practice were launched by the DTI, and as you might remember, the tourism sector had already their charter out. We were then given a year to then align our charter to the codes of good practice, and our charter was then submitted to the DTI for gazetting under Section 9. Now, the difference between a Section 9 and a Section 12 is that Section 12 is purely on informational basis. You know, just for people, for the information to be out there, for those who are interested to comply, then they can, and if not, it's up to them. Now, under Section 9, which is what the codes of good practice are, is that it becomes binding on all industries who fall under the scope of application to then comply to that charter, which puts it on the same level as the codes of good practice. So for companies that are outside of the tourism sector and do not have their own charter, they would then apply the codes of good practice. But if you're within the tourism sector, then you are required to apply the tourism charter codes. In June 2006, the tourism code was then gazetted for public comment. The purpose of today is to communicate the gazetting of the tourism codes and its impact on stakeholders, to unpack the gazetting of the tourism codes and what they mean for your business, and then just to provide clarity on your role regarding the scorecard. The promulgation process started in 2006 when the charter and the scorecard were launched. And in 2007, the DTI launched the Codes of Good Practice, which then gave us a year to align. The charter, in the same year, then we were then aligned to the Codes of Good Practice. The charter was then recognized under Section 12 of the BEE Act of 2003. In 2008, the codes were gazetted for comment under Section 9. We participated in a review of comments by the DTI. In May 2009, the Tourism BEE code was then promulgated into law, putting it in the same position as the codes of good practice. Now, why even bother with, we've got the codes of good practice, why then, you know, the mission then to go and have the tourism charters done, is that tourism has been identified by government as a priority sector for South Africa. The contribution to the GDP in 2007 was around the 8% mark, so we make a distinct difference to the GDP. And stats show that the tourism sector is the fourth largest employer in the country. The sector developed its own charter to address mainly two challenges, and that is of global competitiveness and also to include black people in the tourism sector. The scope of application is divided in three. We have accommodation, and under accommodation you have hotels, resorts, properties, timeshares, bed and breakfast and game lodges, and hospitality and related services. You've got restaurants and conferences that are not attached to hotels. Those which are attached to hotels will then be scored under hotels. Professional catering services attractions consulting and professional services companies, those would be mostly the people in this room then. Your conference organizers, PCOs, incentive groups, those are then fall under